It's a worry. It's just a constant sort of like gnawing thing that I've got to take care of, and someone who wants, more of my funds than I truly have.
They have what they call the 100% penalty. So whatever the business owes, they will go after you personally.
It feels like a bully. Feels like a bully, and they've got the answer, because not the answer, but they've got the big stick.
My name is Chuck Stephanski. I've been a nurse for almost 32 years. Most of my training was obtained in the military. I got out in 1985, and I've worked acute care hospitals in San Francisco, St. Luke's emergency room for about 3 years, UCSF as well. Over the last 15 years, though, I've been working exclusively in blood banks, the Blood Centers of the Pacific, and UCSF's blood banks. About 2 years ago, there were layoffs at the Blood Centers of the Pacific, and I managed to get more hours at UCSF in the interim, but the blood bank at UCSF closed completely about 3 months ago, and the entire staff was laid off.
My name is Peter Fairfield. I'm a black and white printer. Been in the business for 35 years in San Francisco. Our problems with the IRS started in the middle of the dot-com boom, when our commercial lease came up for renewal. I went to our landlord about 6 months before the lease was up, and I said, I see which way the wind is blowing. All these dot-com businesses that are being funded by investor capital are paying exorbitant rents. Even though I've been in the building for 10 years, you can get more rent from these folks than you can from me. If you want me to move, let me know now, because it's going to take me 6 months to move. And he said, no, we want you to stay. When the lease comes up for renewal, we'll do a cost of living increase and continue. So the day I went to sign the new lease, he sat me down with his real estate agent and said, I'm going to do you a favor. Instead of tripling your rent, I'm only going to double it.
When I was 53, I was working at a television station and was doing very well. And they decided to eliminate my position because I was making too much money. And I got a very good severance package. And I decided at that time that this would be a good time to start my own business, because I had about a year's worth of living expenses that I got from my severance package. So that's what I did. I ended up building a business that was about $2.5 million. I was the media buyer, it was mostly radio, but television, press releases. I would do web development, but mostly radio for the Leukemia and Lymphoma Societies Team and Training, which is their largest fundraising brand, does over $100 million a year. And at the end of 2010, which was 7 years later, because of the recession, their fundraising was down, and they decided to let go of a lot of their vendors, and I was one of the vendors that they let go of.
The rent that he was asking at that time was $10,000 a month, which was way, way, way more than we had been paying, and nothing close to anything we could afford. The original tax issue was from the withholding taxes that I withheld from employees' paychecks. I paid the landlord instead of the taxes.
Well, the difficulty that I got was with the end of the Blood Centers of the Pacific thing. I was going through a divorce at the time, and most of my retirement packet had to be separated 50% like the state of California requires. So there was a significant tax bill on that. The UCSF wasn't withholding enough taxes on an annual basis. So with those two combined bills, I ended up owing about $5,000.
It's the end of 2010. I am now 58, 57, something like that. And I couldn't get a job. And I couldn't believe I couldn't get a job. I had this national reputation. I had referrals. I was, with the buys that I had put together and the job that I had done for Leukemia and Lymphoma Society was considered a national best practices. So I thought, arrogantly, that it wouldn't be long for me to get another job.
The IRS, when they come after you hot and heavy, but it takes them a long time to find you and come after you. And the landlord's knocking on my door every day saying, you owe rent, write me a check today, now. IRS doesn't do that till much, much later. So we ended up being able to find a place to move to. It cost a lot to build out a new laboratory, but we did make the move. We were able to get into the new place, but had a huge tax bill.
With the UC pay, as I was making some headway into that with like a monthly payment schedule that I had arranged with the IRS. And then again, the UC thing just went south completely. So I've got no income currently. I think I still owe about maybe 2,500 of it, of that, $5 that I ended up getting billed. So there's just no money in to pay them.
My name is Jane Stillwater. I've been a blogger since the year 2000. I'm very much interested in American politics and the economy in America, with an emphasis on the raw deal that the American middle class has been receiving.
In the back of my mind, I thought, let's plan for the worst and hope for the best. And I thought I would have a job in 6 months, and that would be fine, and then I would do my taxes, and I would have an extension put on the taxes so I could pay everything. It would all be fine. Maybe there'd be a penalty, but I still had the money saved. 6 months passed, 7 months passed, 8 months passed, 9 months passed, 10 months passed. I didn't get a job. So in 2010, I made $193,000. In 2011, I made $12,000.
We were able to pay off some of those taxes by refinancing our house, but we were in the middle of the whole loan shenanigans the banks were pulling at that time. We were able to get a loan because they were handing them out like candy. But we knew we couldn't pay for it, and we told the loan broker that we were working with that we weren't going to be able to pay for it. But they said, oh, don't worry, in 2 or 3 years you'll be able to refinance, you'll be able to lower the payments, you'll be able to make it, don't worry. Well, the broker was getting a commission. The bank that was giving the loan was selling it off immediately to somebody else, so they're passing on the risk. Somebody else that bought it was securitizing it, selling the risk to Wall Street. Eventually, the whole pile of cards came falling down.
I'm dealing with filing for unemployment and still waiting for that to come through. In the meantime, trying to find odd jobs here and there and apply for positions as a nurse again. The difficulty that I keep finding, though, is with the possibilities of positions that are open, there's always that catchphrase, recent experience. And fortunately, being in blood banking for the last 15 years, that kind of makes me as tough to place as a new graduate.
The economic disparities between the people that can play the system or can afford to hire lobbyists to design the system themselves, and you and me, which just, we're barely keeping afloat.
I would not have survived 2011 without help from family. I also took in a renter. I had a 2-bedroom home. I took in a renter for the 2nd bed. I just did everything. I stood in line for food stamps for 4 hours, only to find out that because my renter paid me $1,000 a month, I made too much money. And as a self-employed consultant, I did not qualify for any of the welfare or the financial help programs. So no disability, no unemployment, nothing. But the other thing I did is I immediately started doing the paperwork for an offer in compromise.
We tried again and again to get a loan modification to try to get the payments down, but the bank wasn't willing to work with us. They went through the whole circus of losing paperwork, having you refile. Every month you're dealing with a separate, what they call a single point of contact, but they're actually serial single points of contact. No one person really knew what was happening with our case. No one was talking to us. In some ways, it was worse than dealing with the IRS. We lost our house this year.
You cannot have a democracy unless you have the yeoman American, the salt of the earth, out there voting, taking care of business, making sure that we are a democracy and not an oligarchy. And if you destroy the middle class through overtaxation, unfair tax practices, it's a domino effect. It all just goes, and the next thing you know, we have Marie Antoinette saying, "Let them eat cake."
Well, usually it's like, well, why can't you borrow it from someone? You know, that's ultimately, don't you have any credit cards to pay it off? And I have no credit cards. And made it a point not to get any credit cards. So that's not an option. And over the last couple of months with no work at all, I put enough touch on my family already for funds to just maintain a day-to-day and keep my apartment. But getting any more than that to deal with the tax bill isn't really an option.
So now we get to about July, August, September of 2011. I've now filled out the paperwork for the offer in compromise. I've sent it to the IRS. And I don't hear back from them until almost December of 2011. And December of 2011, they tell me they will let me know within a year on my offer in compromise. And I said, great, thank you. I don't hear anything. I get a couple of jobs here, I get a couple of jobs there. So by the end of 2012, I'm thinking I'm going to hear back from the IRS. And then I get a job. I get an actual job. And the job is in Santa Rosa. So I am packing my bags. I'm packing everything in the house because I'm going to rent the house out. February. I get a call in February at 9:30 at night. Boxes, surrounded by boxes. This is the IRS. And we're calling to talk with you about your offer in compromise. I said, well, I'm in the midst of a move. I don't have any of my paperwork here. Can we set up a time where I can call you back when I have the paperwork and we can talk? And the woman said no. She said, this is the only time I have, and if you can't talk with me now, then we will just basically reject your offer in compromise. 20 minutes later, she said, we're not approving your offer in compromise based upon the answers that you've given me.
We have yet to discover exactly what the final tax bill is going to be. It's only been 3 months since we lost the house, and it's going to take a while. We haven't even gotten paperwork from the bank on the final foreclosure. But I expect that it's going to be a big capital gains bill. I don't know how we're going to pay it, if we're going to pay it.
She asked me something about, did you have a savings account at this place? And I said, yes, I did, and right now the balance was $60. She said, well, but at one time you had almost $20,000 in that savings account. And I said, yes, and if you'll notice the dates on that, that was probably several years ago. And she said, so you have the ability to have that kind of savings in that account? I said, that was when I was working.
Where the people are up against between a rock and a hard place. They owe money. They can't pay it. You know, it almost makes me cry. The way people, my neighbors, don't know what to do.
Since she called me on the cell phone, I was able to track down the number the next day. And it was out of Tennessee. I was able to call her manager and ask them, beg them, could they please set up another time? And I also found the paperwork. I went through all the boxes, found the paperwork, had it in front of me. I said, I'm ready to talk with anybody. And he assured me that it was being written on my record, that I had called, and that someone would call me and would go over everything. And the next notification I got was in the mail that said they had refused the offer in compromise, and because it had been over a year since they had responded to me, the amount now was over $35,000 that I owed, almost $40,000 that I owed, when it had started off around the $20,000 range.
I suspect that there is a possibility that they could actually, check out my current bank account, which is about maybe $34, but I got nothing to hide, so they'll find that the well is dry, whatever investigation they do. And I've shared that information with them. I go, this is my bank. They'll be happy to give you any information that you want because you're the big guys.
I have had quite an education. I would do many things different. I certainly would not have taken the mortgage that we could not pay on our house. The IRS had placed a lien on our house, and that would have had to have been paid when we sold the house, but we would have been able to keep the house.
It doesn't last for a couple of months. It lasts for years. And then you're so depressed, you think, I'll never get a job.
We're actually still in the house. We're about 5 weeks away from moving. We have a small apartment up the street that we're moving into. So we aren't homeless.
Well, I'm actually not of the belief that you should just give people a free ride. I don't want a free ride. What I was hoping for with the offer in compromise was that I would pay 10% of the debt, that I would pay 15% of the debt, but I would do something that said, I understand taxes help my country to run. I'm willing to do the best I can at this time in my life. Right now, the best I can is not very good. But I don't want a free ride, and I don't want you to just say, oh yeah, you're going through a tough time. Yeah, you don't have to pay anything. I'm okay with being responsible and taking my share of the responsibility. I'm not okay with no opportunity to talk with anybody and now owing an amount of money that I can't possibly pay.
I think that laws should be passed that would make it possible to discharge your IRS debt and your student loan debt, just like you would any other debt. And the reason for this is more and more Americans are falling apart behind in their taxes. They're falling apart behind in their day-to-day expenses, and they're falling behind in their credit. Now the government, it falls behind in its credit, doesn't seem to matter. But if we fall behind in our credit, we're doomed. I think that there are organizations like Forgive Our Taxes that are really trying to get all this changed, to benefit the middle class, to strengthen the middle class, to prop them up if necessary, to work for us instead of for somebody who has their money hidden in the Cayman Islands.
I'll be working until I'm 82.